Hey everybody, Harry Kissinger said, and I quote, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world." And I'm telling you this because our bankers have been just got done meeting at Jackson Hole. It's a meeting they have supposedly to talk about inflation and the money supply and all this other stuff. But now they're talking about climate change, and it's being muddled, and I guess it has been for a long time.
Well, every year they have, if you get on their forum, it's actually interesting, the website, every year they have a theme. And this year it was called Reassessing Constraint on the Economy and Policies. And if you went to their agenda, it mentioned several times about post-COVID trends, what happened before, after, what are we going to go back to what was happening before, and some speakers that were there and who all attended. And so it's interesting. Go take a look at their website.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of sociopaths that get together and try to figure out how to manipulate things and get us far away from a free market as possible, if you ask me. Why don't you read a little bit of what's going on?
Sure.
Some highlights.
Yeah, they made some statements, and pretty much all of them have agreed that they have committed to raising interest rates until inflation meaningfully slows. And this statement actually was made on Friday, and it calls 60% of market investors to place bets on another rate hike of 75 basis point in September. So I guess we're definitely going to another...
It's a hawkish outlook.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, that's the opposite of dovish. They're no longer, if it's hawkish, they're raising interest rates and they want to slow the economy down, and because we can't just let inflation run out of control. The problem is they're lying about all of it.
Well, they've also kind of got us in a little bit of a box, and you read here, and it says central banks have engaged in a non-stop program of QE, stimulus measures, near zero interest rate for over a decade since the credit crash of 2008. These policies have kept many of the nations and stock markets on financial support for years, but they've also created this detrimental price inflation that we now, the public, we're suffering under. They said so it's basically a catch-22 scenario. Either way, they're stuck. If the central banks cut off the easy money and raise interest rate, corporations will lose their lifeline, stock buybacks will plunge, markets will fall, and unemployment will rise. But if they continue with the stimulus and low interest rates, inflation's only going to climb higher. So either way, it sounds like we've got a journey ahead of us.
Right, and the whole globe is doing this. It's not just us, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It is. We've never experienced this. Nobody has ever lived through what we're living through right now, and it's the early stages. And we're in a recession. They say we're not, but we are. And we'll be in a depression. When they're talking about how bad the recession is, we will be in a depression. And keep in mind, as we get through this, Hitler came to power over two reasons. Two things got him there: the Weimar hyperinflation and the Great Depression. Double whammy, evil came up from the ashes. So be looking for that as we, progress into this thing.
Yeah. And so I kind of found this interesting. So apparently the bankers have gotten together and said they need to simplify their language. And I guess Jerome Powell took their criticism to heart. And they said he greatly reduced his speech. But here's an interesting fact, I know, because he always overcomplicates things. But his speech, his 8-minute speech, cost the richest people in America $78 billion. One of them was Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. I'll attach the link that you can go on there and look. But literally that 8-minute speech, they lost that much money because he said interest rates were going to rise. He was not going to stop. And they were going to be very, what was the word he used?
Hawkish.
Hawkish. So.
And we've kind of been talking about that, how these people that manipulate everything, the little man behind the curtain pulling all the levers, could absolutely crash the stock market. Mm-hmm. That'd be a good way to get a hold on inflation. And that's exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So they're slowing everything down, and what does it mean for us? We'll get to that in just a second. I want you to keep going with this. There's some really good
so
stuff
they
in there.
also finally have come out and said these signs that the inflation is increasingly spreading to goods and services that are not directly affected by the pandemic or the war in Ukraine, because they've been blaming everything on that. So they finally come out and acknowledge that. But so we were talking about it. Well, one more thing before we go. Japan, for some reason, is not experiencing this. Their governor, the banks, whatever, have come out, and they still are going to have to keep doing QE because their inflation's going down. I think it's like 2.4 or something the guy said. So they're opposite of us.
Right.
I didn't understand that, but I'm not an economist.
Okay, Japan's really different, and I'm not an economist. I don't, I try to keep an eye on it and really try to figure it out. We're all kind of muddling through this together. I'd like to produce evidence and get everybody thinking. When you start thinking, you start realizing things. Japan has been in stagflation territory for a long time.
Yes.
They did really good in the 90s. Sony and all that was going crazy. And now they seem to be in some kind of deflation. I don't know. It's hard to tell about that. I kind of thought that was going to happen here for a while. Some type of real stagnant, no growth. It looks like it's going to be a little worse. According to Jerome Powell, we're going to see some negative GDP numbers, and they're really going to crush this thing down. Because really, they stimulated so much last time, and they might have learned a lesson. They stimulated so much, people quit going to work.
They did.
People quit going to restaurants to serve, and
Well, it's still, to this day, when we go out to eat, which isn't very rare, but the few times we do, they're always short-staffed. Always short-staffed. And they'll even have signs on the door sometime saying that. So it's definitely affected.
And you can have all the money, all the gold, all the Bitcoin, and if you don't have goods and services, it means nothing. I'm always happy to see somebody working and serving us when we go out. We've had the opportunity to go on a few trips, and I was always grateful to see somebody there to cook our food and bring it to us. And, we don't get to go out and eat that much, but when we do, I'm really grateful for those people and always try to never speak down to them.
Right. No, that's a good point. Yeah, every service is needed. So after we read this article, actually we read several of them, we were kind of like, how is this going to affect, okay, so what, richest people in the world lose some money. I'm sure it's not going to affect them bad. But us, the people that have 401ks, IRAs, the retirement's tied up in this stuff, and they start to lose. Well, I know personally I've had phone calls about precious metals, and people literally over the last 6 months, the amount of their retirement has just, it'll make you cry. But I was asking Chris, I'm like, in real terms, I even tried to research it a little bit, and there's not much out there. How does it really affect us, the restaurant down the street, the farmer that raises our beef, where we get our, corn and goods from and vegetables, and how is that going to affect us? We were talking about it.
Yeah, well, you can go back all the way to where Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and if they're taking a pay cut, they don't take those lightly. It usually rolls downhill.
It does.
So when the wealthy start getting hammered, they start hammering everybody else underneath them. And the end consumer, which is us, always pays the bill. They always pay the inflation bill. And, inflation it's a tax that doesn't have to be voted in.
Right.
It's like you don't have to a hard sell to anybody. You just give everybody money, and everybody's happy for a short period of time. And then everybody's upset because inflation's bad. It's a tax. So
I got a question for you then. This is kind of where my head was going. So everyday people that want to go buy, say, a car, a house, interest rates go up. So the demand obviously is going to go down. So would that push the prices down then of houses and cars?
Yes, absolutely.
So then they're just going to sit there then?
They're going to... that's called demand destruction.
Okay.
And when prices get too far out of whack, people will just start buying.
That's what I was reading.
And the demand will come down, and then people will start buying again. It's hard to see sometimes because they muddle it with all this QE and weird. They're in the background subsidizing businesses and giving these electric car stuff, and it's hard to see, but that's what's supposed to happen.
Okay, so then
opinion.
No, I'm curious because I've been wrapping my head around it. So if the farmers, because remember we talked about the farmers a few minutes ago, if they go to get a loan and they can't get equipment that they need or new vehicles that they need, well then they can't do their crops anymore. So
they can't fertilize because fertilizer's so expensive, and a lot of that ties into the climate crap they're up there talking about too.
So technically, the prices of food could go up then.
Oh yeah, food's gonna be, like we said, I talk about Venezuela all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not that they don't have any food; nobody can afford it. So, yes, with inflation hitting the farmers, farmer needs a new tractor.
Yeah, he can't afford it. The interest rates.
He can't
are too
afford the
high.
one he wants, so he gets a lesser one maybe, or it slows growth when that happens, and he's got to pay a higher interest rate, but he's got to use some money to fertilize his crops. So what does he do? He grows less crops. He fertilizes less, and then he has less produce. So it's really, it just trickles down
does.
all the way from the elite all the way down. It's going to hurt them, not at all really.
Well, so that's kind of what
But-
I guess we were thinking when I read this article. I'm like, yeah, that's one thing to stand up and say, let's raise interest rates, and oh, big deal to some of the people, but how does it really affect us? And I think it will affect us, and it's something we need to think about. I'd be curious to see what you guys thought, how it would affect you. But anyway, that's kind of what we were thinking, and then I wanted to hit on one more thing if you're done with that.
Well, home prices.
Yeah, I think home prices will go down.
Yeah, I do too, but the interest rates, people are still going to want that much more home than they can afford.
They always do.
But they're going to be paying that in interest.
Yeah.
So, and okay, in the 70s, Paul Volcker crushed the back of inflation, and that was a massive recession after that. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think they're going to do this little bit of hawkish stuff, and then it's going to make such an impact, just like the last knee-jerk reaction. They're going to make another one, and he said he was going to be narrow. I'm not going to clip it in there, but check out Jerome Powell's speech. He said he's going to be very narrow and, talk to the point and all this stuff. And he pretty much said, we're not going to be dovish. We're going to be hawkish is what I got from it. So
Yep, so did I.
watch it for yourself. I really want to encourage people. I know he says a lot of poppycock, and he says things you can't understand, but just do your best and maybe look up a few things that you don't really understand. That's what I did. I started doing that about 7 years ago, and you really start to say, hey, wow, that's a lie. And, he's just saying words,
Right.
big ones that hardly anybody understands, but try to make sense of. And one last thing, I've been getting some emails from people that said our troops are being deployed to Ukraine. I haven't.
We've not been able to confirm it, but we have gotten it at ninjanationreport.com.
Right,
Eat the
and
Gmail.
I don't talk a lot about the war, but I would like to know if that's happening. So that's it for today, guys. Have an awesome, awesome day. We'll see you in the next one. Later.